Hey guys, it's Dante at Ferrigno Freedom YouTube channel. I'm coming back to share another video with you. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today because I'm going to be looking at something that just came out. So this is basically like breaking news review that deals with meat and what's going on in the market. This particular video is put out by Redacted, which is a husband and wife group of former mainstream journalists who have gone the YouTube route to start sharing their information because they wanted to be able to speak truthfully to people rather than have all of their news redacted by somebody else that's trying to control the narrative. And my wife and I have both watched Clayton and Natalie for a while now, and I found them to be very reliable news sources. And I've known quite a few other people who have been on their show that I rely on too for truthful information. This particular video is called "You Might Be Eating Bill Gates' Lab-Grown Meat Tonight," Redacted with Clayton Morris. So since I got to go to work this afternoon and I'm trying to get this video out for the Saturday evening viewers, I want to go ahead and get this recorded, so we'll just jump right in as quickly as we can here. Let me go ahead and maximize this screen and bring you into the video. Let's go.
You might want to check the label the next time you buy chicken at your grocery store because it might have come from a lab backed by Bill Gates. If you guessed Bill Gates for your lab-grown meat, if Bill Gates was on your lab-grown meat bingo card, then you win the night.
Okay. Do you picture this like in Star Wars, where she like 1/4 portion, and then she puts water in it?
Yeah,
becomes big.
Disgust. That's what I picture, and that's actually what it is. We're going to show you some video of this in a second here. That it might have come from lab. The meat that you buy at the grocery store might have come from a lab backed by Bill Gates instead of a farm. This story might leave you questioning the very essence of our food supply. Over the past few days, the United States Department of Agriculture, the kids call it the USDA for short, has just approved the sale of lab-grown meat from not one, but two companies funded by Bill Gates. That's right, folks. The man who wants to control every aspect of our lives is now trying to dictate what we eat. The two companies that just won approval are company number one called Good Meat. The company number two is Upside Foods. First, can we just take notice of their names? Good Meat and Upside Foods. Good Meat's parent company is called Eat Just. In other words, the meat you currently are eating from a farm is bad meat or somehow unethical, is what they're saying with these names, right? I work at Eat Just because I'm a just person.
Oh, it'll work. It'll work. Look at all the people that buy all natural and all that from the grocery stores because it just sounds like it's the right thing to do.
For sure.
I eat at Good Meat. Oh, I get my meat from Good Meat. So it's not a slaughtered meat. It's good meat.
And
it's
what's the...
You know, real quick, right off the bat, I notice a few things that are very interesting here that they point out that are accurate. Is I've mentioned this many times before. When you go by what the front of the package says, you're just getting the advertising. You're getting the hook. And a lot of times the lie. When you look at a company whose business name is Just Meat or Meat That's Made Justly or whatever he just said, and these names are designed to give them a virtuous sound to them that's different than what was going on in the past. And they don't even take into account people who want to get rid of animal farming because they want to protect the animals. Don't take into account what do you think is going to happen with all these cows if they don't have if they're not being raised by cattlemen who are planning on taking them to slaughter. That what are they just going to run free and be safe? They're going to eliminate them? I mean, I think that cows live much better lives under the current system. Even as bad as it is, they still thrive in larger numbers than they would if they were just left to their own in the wild. So I don't know what they think is going to happen to all these millions of cows that we have if we don't continue to have them as a food source. But all this virtue signaling in the names is it's just absolutely annoying. Now, I've never heard of either of these two meat companies, so I'm pretty sure nothing I've bought's come from them. But just the fact that a couple of companies out there are being backed by Bill Gates' companies that are trying to do these manufactured meats is unnerving enough.
Of the Impossible meat, the burgers that have
the Impossible Burger, yeah.
And
yeah.
there's the other one.
Yep.
There's what's the competitor to that?
Beyond Meat.
Beyond. Okay.
Beyond,
Yeah.
Yeah, Beyond.
Okay.
So, their names are one thing, right? That basically your meat is bad. Somehow you're unethical for the meat you eat. You're currently unjust if you eat from a farm. We'll unpack that in a minute. Let's start with what proponents of lab-grown meat say about it. First, they say this process eliminates the need for animal slaughter, paving the way for meat production that doesn't require any animals at all. Secondly, proponents of lab-grown meat, the stuff you're seeing here on your screen, shows that there are significant environmental benefits. They say this, right? That traditional animal agriculture contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emissions and deforestation. Again, this is what they say.
But it does require an animal. You need to pluck a feather or something to get the DNA. You do need a host.
Right. You do need animal proteins. This is why it's not, for vegetarians, for vegans, you can't have this lab-grown meat because it still comes from animal proteins, right? So if
they're going to pluck feathers for beef, they're doing it wrong already. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
Some sort of dinosaur meat. Anyway, first they say this process eliminates the need for animal slaughter, paving the way for meat production that doesn't require any animals at all. Secondly, proponents of lab-grown meat claim that there are significant environmental benefits. Traditional animal agriculture contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emissions and deforestation. Again, this is what they say. And how exactly does this work? Well, according to Andrew Noyes, who is the head of PR for Good Meat's parent company called Eat Just, the lab-grown meat, stuff in the Petri dish, also known as cell-based or cultivated meat, is produced directly from animal cells, cultivated in what he calls bioreactors, with the help of nutrients like amino acids. He says to picture massive brewery-like vats, rather than petri dishes in sterile laboratories. Once ready, the meat is then collected from these bioreactors and then processed. He says it looks like minced chicken. Now, you might be wondering, why should we be worried about lab-grown meat? Well, for starters, it's an affront to our traditional agricultural industry, which has been the backbone of the United States for centuries, and family farms are being crushed by regulations, and now they face direct competition from these lab-grown alternatives. I think it's a direct attack. I mean, it's really, to my mind, a direct attack on our hardworking farmers and ranchers who have dedicated their lives to feeding America, and frankly, the rest of the world, but we're focusing on America in this story. We recently had a Wyoming rancher on the show who talked about these attacks, and she talked about this lab-grown meat problem.
So I'm certainly not an expert on, how much land they require. What I do know that we saw in the United States was the meatless options were the last things left in the meat case. During the pandemic, everybody was eating the real products. Every food source has an environmental footprint, period. Right? There's an environmental impact to everything that we eat, whether it's plant or whether it's animal. What I do know is here in the United States, we are losing hundreds of acres of some of our best quality crop ground every single day as urban expansion occurs. They're building housing developments, they're putting up schools and parking lots and, shopping structures. And that's land we will never get back in production. Land is a finite resource. And so, we can't make more of it. So where's all of this additional food going to come from? Because to even come close to replacing the nutrition that we would need to replace by eliminating animal source proteins, how would we ever begin to grow enough additional crops without the land being available to do that? And I think that's something that I constantly ask that no one has an answer for, because the reality is I don't think that you can. We simply do not have the land available.
But the implications go beyond economic devastation. Go ahead, David.
Well, I was going to ask, think about the ecosystem. So it's what are you going to have? You're going to have solely now milk producing and nothing else, no more leather, no more, there's not going to be this circle of things that come from one animal. It's not like it's just producing meat. You know, they have different things that they produce. So it's like you're going to have to get those sources from somewhere. And then you have all of these cattle. What are they going to do? Just euthanize them and waste that meat? Like, you know, like, because the whole industry will be disrupted. Like, that just makes zero sense.
Right. And she talks about in this interview about how much carbon or nitrogen, I can't remember, is trapped under ranches like this, because there's a whole circle in place, is that when these grazing animals graze, they encourage the growth of plants, which is good for the environment. This is all true. So we would just completely remove this from the ecosystem.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's devastating for these farmers. It's devastating for the economy. It's devastating for the ecology, but they don't want to admit it. They want to kind of pretend that it's not, and they'd rather focus on the meat that you're getting from these farmers. And the implications go beyond this economic devastation. Lab-grown meat poses serious health risks, by the way. The mainstream media conveniently ignores this part of the story. These synthetic creations are produced in laboratories using unknown chemicals and processes. We have no idea what the long-term effects of consuming such unnatural products might be in our bodies. Are we willing to sacrifice our health for this sort of convenience of lab-grown meat? Bill Gates doesn't want you to think about this.
Well, I think that it speaks to... Did you want to let him speak?
No.
I think it speaks to, though, the sort of faddism of food, especially in the American diet, because people will sort of buy into it, and the stock market will buy into it. So when you think about the popularity of Beyond Burger, Impossible Burger, it seems very chic. The last time I was in the U.S., I couldn't get over how many aisles of collagen coffee powders there were in the Whole Foods. And I was like, what the hell is this? This is new since I was home last. Collagen coffee, like... We love that. We eat it up, because if it seems like it's going to promote anything and we can put it into something else, right? It's just, it's almost too easy. It's too easy to manipulate us with food fashion.
Yeah.
Well, and also if you think about it, like if they take control of all the farms and they make it basically like illegal to produce meat. So you have ranchers that produce good meat right now, right? So they have no control over what they can put in that meat. You know, what they can put in the milk. If they're making it in a lab, they can put whatever they want in it and not tell us. We'll be getting inoculated with all kinds of stuff, most likely, you know, and it's like we'd have no control. So that's
right. And this goes to a point that I've had a lot of people ask me, do you only eat grass-fed, grass-finished, or do you eat a lot of store-bought meat? And to answer that question for a lot of people who have been asking, it's a mixture of both. Mostly because buying whole cows was something new to me when I first started doing it back almost 2 years ago. And now it's gotten to be a little bit of old hat, because I'm used to dealing with one rancher and I just place an order and get it when it's ready. The only problem is he's gotten a little bit of popularity from my show. So he's got a lot more orders, and he was already really had plenty of orders. He wasn't looking to make anything off of me talking about his show. He was more about his ranch. He was more interested in people learning about the regenerative farming techniques that he uses and getting other farmers to do these things that are good and clean for the environment. But I can't always get the cow when I need it from him, because they're not ready right away. Like, for instance, I placed the order that I'm going to pick up this month in July. I placed that order in February, and that's how long it takes, because he's not going to send the cow to slaughter until it's ready. And he's been telling me it was going to be July, so that's what we're looking at now. But meanwhile, I've had to substitute a lot of store-bought stuff. And when I can get deals at Publix for $5.99 or $6.99 a pound on rib roasts, I'll go buy a ton of those, because that'll save me a little bit of money and get me the meat that I need to get through on. But if I had my druthers, I'd rather buy all my meat from him if I could. It's just adapting to a different way of doing it. I'm not used to buying that much at a time, you know, something that's going to last me 3 or 4 months with several of us eating it, probably longer if it's one person. But I know between me and my family, we can go through 3 cows a year pretty easy. And then some, I'm betting, because I don't think I've gone fully meat from my rancher ever, because when I start to run out of some of the better cuts, I tend to buy some of the better cuts from the store still, so I can have more ribeye and things like that. But as to what they were saying about how they don't have any control over what they can put into it. He's talking about people like Bill Gates who want to manipulate the food supply, who have a goal of population reduction, and who are talking about using things like vaccines and healthcare to achieve that. He doesn't have any control when you buy direct from the rancher like that, and the rancher takes it in and gets it processed. And I like that personally. I want to be able to get my meat that way, but it's not fully as easy as it should be right now. And I would love to see somebody come and talk about how people in the meat industry, people in the raising of cattle industry, are looking around and noticing what's happening and realizing that there is a new market for their product that is direct to customer that could save them from having to let other companies get rich selling the product that they're growing and then allow customers to buy at a reasonable price. That's my hope anyway.
I like having the ability to go to a local farmer and get meat that I know how it's raised, I know what it's eating, I know what's in its body. But like, I think they're losing control of that regulation because that movement is getting a lot more popular. More people are eating that way. More people want to know where their food comes from, and I don't think they like that.
And making demands of these ranchers to say, hey, the food that we do not want like mRNA shots in this meat. Like, can you make sure that there's no mRNA shots going into this beef? And ranchers can say, yeah, I can do that, and I can serve you specifically. This is the meat that we're not using these shots with, and these antibiotics and these other things. So, are we willing to sacrifice our health for the convenience of this lab-grown meat? Bill Gates doesn't want you to think about that. In fact, Bill Gates is the biggest backer of these companies. He's heavily funded these lab-grown meat companies to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. But when you dive more deeply into where his money is going, you're going to notice something interesting. Bill Gates, a few years ago, planted the seed with the mainstream media and $13 million to media organizations. Listen to this. He had the goal, of course, of pushing a plant-based meat narrative. He donated $13 million to the Atlantic magazine and the Guardian. And soon after he donated money to these newspapers, well, they started writing articles about fake meat. It's amazing how money buys the media. Look at this headline. This is in the Guardian after he donates the money. Plant-based meat, by far the best climate investment, report finds. Here's another one. Oh, the Guardian's really on this beat suddenly. Why is the Guardian so obsessed with this? The most damaging farm products? Organic pasture-fed beef and lamb, writes.
That title right there alone is such a pure bald-faced lie. I mean, I've seen the land that's raised properly, like the way that Miles does up at Big Mo Cattle. He doesn't use any chemicals on the land. He doesn't use any chemicals on the animals. Everything is done naturally. He makes sure that the pigs and the chickens are involved in the process of going through the field and that the cows never eat the grass all the way down to the ground. As a matter of fact, when they leave the paddock, there's still tons of tall grass for them to chew on. And he always makes sure that they are eating grass that is real tall because all of the carbohydrates are up high in the bricks on that grass. And yet he doesn't need to have pest control products and Roundup and all those other things to clean his field with. And it's beautiful and it smells good too. I've been to a lot of ranches, and I've been to a lot of ranches where the first impression was, whew, how can you stand the smell out here all the time? But when I was at his place, even when I was out in the cow pasture, I didn't get that sense that it stank. I could tell I was around animals, but it smelled clean. It smelled natural. And it smelled like and it looked like this is what nature's supposed to look like. It didn't look like one of those horror documentaries where they show what the beef processors are doing at the big packing plants and at the grain yards. Big Mo bypasses all of that with his process. And there are a lot of ranchers out there who are willing to produce and to deliver the meat to you this way. It's just a matter of getting out to find them. And while I'm even thinking about it, for those of you who are looking for a local rancher who's willing to sell you good quality beef, one of the best places to start searching for one is usabeef.org. That's how I found Miles at Big Mo Cattle when I was living in Georgia. It was just a 2-hour drive for me to get there. Now it's a 3-hour drive, but I don't mind because I'd just as soon get the meat from him than to have to get it from somewhere where I don't know what's going on with it. I don't know how they're raising it. I do know that a lot of the regular ranchers out there are whatever vaccines and drugs that everybody else is doing, they jump right on board because they figure, well, we got to stay ahead of the competition. So we're not going to let them, produce something cheaper and faster than we can. We're going to make sure we have all of our animals full of antibiotics because they're eating grass all the way down to the ground, or they're eating tons of grain and they're constantly drunk from the starch that's in the corn that their bodies aren't really meant to be digesting anyway. So for them to say that organic pasture-fed beef and lamb is the most damaging farm products, I don't see how it can be damaging if it's good for the land, if it's good for the animals, and if it's good for the people eating the animals. It just makes no sense unless you have a different agenda.
Guardian. Wow.
What?
Hey, thanks for the money, Bill Gates. Here's an article.
Look at the seed oil industry. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here's another article from The Guardian. Remember The Guardian, by the way, was the newspaper that broke the
Edward Snowden.
I mean, how they have fallen. Anyway, here's The Guardian. Climate-friendly diets can make a huge difference, even if you don't go all out vegan. Yeah, here, eat the fake meat, it points out. Here's another one. Here's The Atlantic. Also took money from Bill Gates. What's different about the Impossible Burger?
It's gross.
And here's another one. Here's the other one. Plant-based food entrepreneurs are marketing their meatless products to omnivores. And then here's another Atlantic article. Will we ever stop eating animal meat? Asks The Atlantic. Thanks for your money, Bill Gates. We need more moral arguments against meat. We need a technological revolution in better, cleaner food by Derek Thompson. Hey, thanks for your money, Bill Gates. We'll write an article for you. This is how the media works.
Technological revolution sounds like they want us to eat Soylent Green.
You send them $13 million and they will back your narrative. So how do we know that Gates is invested in promoting plant-based meat? Well, he's done countless interviews on the subject and he's put billions of dollars promoting it. Here he is during an MIT interview. Bill Gates' rich nations should shift entirely to synthetic beef, he says in this interview. Gates told the MIT Technology Review, quote, I don't think the poorest 80 countries will be eating synthetic meat. I do think all rich countries should move to 100% synthetic beef.
And the only problem with somebody like Bill Gates saying they should do this is he doesn't just leave that up to your choice and what you decide you want to do. He's leveraging. He's using his money, his influence, and his power to control things behind the scenes and with these businesses, these media companies like they mentioned with The Guardian and The Atlantic, and then also these fake meat manufacturing companies. And he also works with the World Health Organization and gets involved in the whole vaccine thing. So he's making these things happen rather than just saying this is what he thinks should happen. He's trying to play God, and he's playing God with our food supply. And that's why I have a problem with Bill Gates. And, I used to be one of the biggest fans of Bill Gates at one time back in the 80s and 90s, especially the 90s, I guess you could say, because I was a big PC guy back then as far as into computers. And I thought what he did was fantastic, even though I didn't like all of the way he did it. And when I started to learn about some of his business practices, I got a little more leery of the way he did things. But I was thankful to have what I could do on a computer. I don't know. I've learned a lot since then. I've learned a lot about him. I've learned a lot about Windows. And it's one of the reasons I use a Mac today, although Apple hasn't gone too good on that road either. They still make the superior product, but I just wanted to say that I was not always against Bill Gates like this, but when I started to realize that he's using his philanthropy to control the world the way he thinks it should be and to make it into the image that he thinks it should be made into, I have a problem with that.
He said, you can get used to the taste difference. And the claim is they're going to make it taste even better over time, he
You
says.
get used to it.
Eventually, that green premium is modest enough that you can sort of change your behavior of people or use regulation to totally shift the demand. I mean,
Yeah.
reading that statement, it's like Dr. Evil statement that I'm reading.
Yes,
I mean,
but it's true though, because if you can get someone convicted enough, for instance, you know, we tried to eat gluten-free for a while, and we still don't eat a lot of gluten, but in the United States, I would get these gluten-free bread products, and I'd be like, it's the same, right, honey? Right? Like,
we'd have tried to convince ourselves
I
it
would
tastes
try
the
and
same.
convince myself that I could get used
And
to
it
it, that it
tastes
was
like it.
fine, and they're awful. And so,
And then if they get it close to tasting decent, it's filled with like 1,000 other chemicals.
Yes.
So what are you doing to yourself?
Well, and think about how easy it was for them to get us all on board with CFL light bulbs. Like, we all replaced every bulb in our house with CFL light bulbs, and then we found out later how bad they were. They can't get dispose of them, and it's like we all bought into it. So they can sell this stuff so easily on the convenience, on
He's talking about those curly Q light bulbs. I remember everybody was going to those, and when I was running the retirement home, we were in the process of changing all of our bulbs to those, and I kept thinking, gosh, these things are expensive. And then we started looking into it deeper, and we found out that if one breaks, then it's like you got to call a hazmat team because there's chemicals and poisons in there. And why in the world? See that. You know what? I'm gonna calm down. I'm gonna take a little bit of a pause here, because sometimes I let the negative people in my comments get under my skin, and people that have pointed out to me that Bill Gates is a good guy and things like that. And I think to myself, this has got to be a bot. There's nobody that actually believes this, that looks at what he's doing, but it could be a real person. And sometimes I wind up talking to them, but I want to be able to talk to you guys and just say that this is exactly the kind of thing that happens every time somebody thinks they know what's best for everyone and then try to force their way to make it best for everyone. That's when we always wind up in a worse situation.
it's better for the environment. Like, so many people are going to buy into this, and at the end of the day, like, then that's like perfect for them. I think it's funny too. I called Bill Gates the crossroads of corruption, because it's like all of this corruption leads to him, and it's so weird.
Yeah. Well, you know what's weird too is that something's going on with Bill Gates, because over the past few weeks, I have, I've had Whitney Webb here on the show, and I've asked her this question, but then why are suddenly we're getting this like mainstream media hit pieces on Bill Gates? It's weird. And then today, front page of the Wall Street Journal, big expose about how girls who would go and interview for jobs at his office were like asked all sorts of like sexual questions and all sorts of really creepy stuff. So something's about to happen to Bill Gates. There's some sort of
I
big...
wonder if he built Matt Lauer's door.
Who knows? Something's coming though for him. I don't know what it is, but there's some sort.
That's interesting. I've been paying attention to the whole thing with Epstein and what's her name? I can't think of the girl's name. The one that has the whole list of all the names. And Bill Gates kind of got mixed in with that whole crowd of what was going on Epstein Island. And his answers when he was questioned about it were so evasive and so slimy that it's like, gosh, I don't know if you could answer that any worse and not sound like I don't know. I don't know exactly what to say about it. All I know is it's interesting if they if the powers that be behind all of this are deciding to throw him under the bus. I don't know what to think about that. I'd like to think that it's just the truth coming out, but when it comes to the mainstream media, I'm distrustful.
Something's unfolding. Anyway, just to go back to his statement, you can get used to the taste difference. And the claim is they're going to make it taste even better. And he says you can sort of change the behavior of people or use regulation to shift that demand. So he knows how this works. Basically going to force you to eat this. So he believes all rich countries should move to 100% synthetic beef, he says.
That's what I was saying.
This is a threat to our freedom of choice, in my opinion, because We have a God-given right to choose what we eat. And imagine a world where the only options available are a manufactured beef in a lab or a manufactured chicken in a lab, controlled by the likes of Bill Gates. That's what we're moving to. This is a step towards complete control over our food supply, giving powerful, hungry elites the ability to manipulate and dictate what we put on our plates. It's an assault on our individual freedoms and our right to make choices for ourselves. Just look at what's happening in the Netherlands today. Huge protests today, Thursday. In fact, we had a lot of viewers last night saying, oh, Thursday, big protests in the Netherlands for the farmers. Massive protests. They've taken 3,000 farms away. Farmers' lives ruined. Their goal is to remove all farms and traditional meat production, which they believe is killing the planet. With no evidence, by the way, they say this. Never mind, last week we saw a new report saying the Earth has actually been cooling over the last 20 years instead of heating up. But don't tell them that. By the way, that story got no mainstream media coverage. It went away real fast.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know, that thing with the Netherlands, that has been going on for months and months now. And what's going on with the farmers over there and how they're being shut down and the industry itself is being shut down. I mean, the Netherlands was like the second largest exporter of food. As tiny as that little country is, to be the one who's exporting so much, and then they're going to be using these crazy policies, these climate control policies, to shut down the ability of a nation as tiny as the Netherlands to produce so much healthy food. It's shocking. And it's all in the guise of climate control, which is, again, something that people like Bill Gates and the whole Davos crowd and the WEF crowd are all about.
So this, it's making the Earth get really warm and hot. Or is it? No, actually the opposite's happening. So, but that's inconvenient. But what about the environmental impact of this lab-grown meat? Is it somehow going to save the planet? Advocates claim it's more sustainable as an alternative, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, the resources required to produce lab-grown meat on a large scale are astronomical. In fact, it uses a massive amount of energy intensive, that you wouldn't believe, not to mention the massive amounts of water and chemicals involved to make this happen.
Yeah.
In fact, a recent study by UC Davis found that lab-grown meat could be up to 25 times worse for the environment. Up to 25 times worse. 25x, not like one time or two times. No, 25 times worse. Here is UC Davis in an interview in California. Watch.
New this morning, lab-grown meat made from animal cells is thought to be better for the environment, but a new study from UC Davis shows that lab-grown meat could potentially have a worse carbon footprint. Joining us live with the details of this new study is one of the authors, Edward Spank. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Happy to be here.
Edward, tell us the top takeaways from the study.
Yeah, so we conducted a study, and it shows that there's a risk that cultured meat actually might be worse for the environment in some situations than animal agriculture. Much of this risk is that, if we're using production methods typical of the pharmaceutical industry, it requires really resource-intensive ingredients to grow this material than if we grow it in sort of a food production environment.
Oh, interesting.
Who'd have thought?
Next time, Edward, adjust your camera so you don't look like a tiny person. Anyway, to me, it's clear this so-called solution is actually exacerbating the very problems that it claims to solve. It's just another scheme by the World Economic Forum globalist agenda to control and manipulate the masses and to make billions of dollars of profits in the process. We must support our local farmers, I believe, and I think we need to reclaim our food system before it's too late. We are watching it slip away, guys. Thank you to the farmers in the Netherlands and the people in the Netherlands who are rising up and saying, hey, this political party, this fake political party that was supposed to be supporting us is actually not. And we need your support. 3,000 farms taken away. It's coming to the United States. It's happening already.
Yeah, and I feel like we're going to be inundating our body with synthetics. Like, these synthetics aren't good. Everything that a cow produces is natural. I want to eat natural stuff that my body is able to break down naturally. My body has to figure out how to produce synthetics and how to break those down. And I don't want my body going through that, because who knows what that's going to do.
Yeah. I mean, you saw the World Health Organization today, after decades of legal battles about aspartame. Finally, now the World Health Organization is going to label aspartame as a cancer-causing agent. Yeah, the stuff that's in Diet Coke.
And yogurt.
Yeah, the stuff that people eat, like, hey, it's aspartame. It's fine. At least I'm not putting on calories. No, but you are dying of cancer.
The stuff they don't allow in most countries other than the United States. There's some countries that won't allow it. That and sodium benzoate, too, which is a preservative we use here that they won't use in other countries.
So let us know your thoughts on this. Will you guys be eating the Bill Gates lab-grown meat?
Well, it's interesting because Bjorn Lomborg in his book, False Alarm, does talk about how this might revive the meat industry, how innovation is really going to get us out of climate change and not, these climate policies that politicians put forth, such as like King Charles this week put on a climate clock in London to tell us how much time we have left until 2030 and we hit this emissions goal or we don't. And so I do believe in the power of innovation to make certain changes, to make better cars, to make better stoves. Those kind of things do seem to be real solutions. But when you think about meat grown in the same way that vaccines are made, the way he put it, like it would work the same as the pharmaceutical industry, then I'm out. That's not the not the innovation that I want when it comes to meat.
Yeah, in a petri dish in a lab with all of those chemicals and those processes. Anyway, let us know.
And they're getting emergency use authorization for meat.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Did you guys get your meat? Did you guys get your meat injection?
Well, yeah. Then you think about those two merging, right? And it's like, oh, here's a meat with a DTaP vaccine. Just eat it. You'll be better off.
Well, that's the thing, right? We might be getting mRNA and other meat. Like you might be getting these vaccines shoved right in the meat, right in this process. You wouldn't even know it, right?
Well, to David's point earlier. Most of these cows are given ivermectin, and a lot of it passes through to their urine and gets into the soil. And so we do absorb those things in an indirect system, and it all wet already.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. Mm-hmm. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time.
All right. Well, that's that. So basically, it's two companies are ultimately getting backing from Bill Gates for making this kind of lab-grown meat. And I don't know if you're buying any of those. I mean, they aren't anything I've ever heard of, so I'm pretty sure that I haven't bought anything that was made by those two companies. But the one thing he did point out is something that I've had people ask me over and over, whether or not I thought they were already using mRNA vaccines in the cattle that we buy the meat from the store, from those ranchers or from those meat packing companies. And I don't know. I'm not trusting enough to say that they would tell us either. So that's why I do encourage people, if you can buy local, because that is going to swing the power hinges on this. The door of power on this is going to swing open or closed based on whether or not the money is there for the people who are doing this. And if we're not giving the people who aren't taking our health into account our money, then at some point they're going to run out of money. And hopefully people who are making breakthroughs and coming up with new ways, innovative ways to get meat to market or to get it to where it's raised properly, like I've told you about being done at Big Mo Cattle, then that's how we win, is that we make sure that we're paying people who are doing the right thing for the products and services that they offer, that we're buying good quality beef, that we're actually spending our money, our votes, in another way of saying it, because every dollar you spend is a vote for whatever it was you spent money on. When you spend money on that locally bought beef, then you are supporting those who create locally bought beef, and you're bringing that industry up higher. And the more people you know who are doing that, the better it's going to be for all of us, because it's going to lead to more competition for pricing, and it's going to lead to better practices between people who want to earn the business of their customers, the smarter customers who are getting conscious of what they're putting in their bodies. And there's a lot of us in the carnivore community who are exactly on that page. Well, That's all I've got to say for you on this one. And I'm glad we got to watch this together. If you don't mind, stick around for a quick little message from Carnivore Crisps, and I'll see you guys next time.
What's this? Oh, is everyone feeling good? Is everyone ready for treat treats?
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?